Story 1. Very different kind of humor. To laugh with your significant other is one of the most important qualities in a relationship for me, especially during tougher times to come. Story 2. Having arguments is normal. It is healthy to talk about issues to calibrate and express yourself openly. Arguments that cannot be resolved, where one party is unwilling to resolve them, or that you do not want to discuss, are the start of a problem. Communication is key. Story 3. If you bring up something they did that upset you and their response is, "Nothing is ever good enough for you," instead of, "I am sorry that upset you," we can work on figuring out a solution that works for both of us. Story 4. They do not want to hang out as much as you do. They do not answer your texts for days. They play childish mind games. Story 5. You are having many arguments and misunderstandings immediately. A few are normal, maybe a serious one, but if it is like every other day or worse. Story 6. Feeling overly self-conscious around them, as if you are worried they will not like your genuine self or will judge you harshly for it. Story 7. When one person is much more attracted or has stronger feelings than the other, that person will give much more but will not receive the same in return. Story 8. Watch how they treat and speak to others. That is how they will eventually speak and treat you after the newness wears off. That was my experience anyway. Story 9. If a person interprets even the slightest request for a change in communication or behavior as a personal attack, you have to be very careful with your words to avoid being misunderstood. Story 10. They do not bring their friends around you or make an effort to include you in their friends and family. If this does not happen after things get serious, it is a red flag. Story 11. Saying or thinking things like, "The bad times are awful, but the good times are just amazing," is common. Relationships should not be emotional roller coasters. Story 12. When this happens, you get into an argument about something small like the dishes. They talk to you in a disrespectful way. You try to address the way they are talking to you. They respond by going back to the small issue, the dishes, and completely ignore the bigger issue, which is how you talk to each other. Story 13. If you have broken up and gotten back together before your 6-month anniversary, it is a rather inauspicious start to the relationship. If your libidos do not align, the relationship may last, but it will not be easy. Story 14. When they put you on a pedestal, it is difficult for both of you. The partner on the pedestal does not have the freedom to simply be, and it is exhausting. The partner who places the other person on a pedestal always feels beneath their significant other in their mind. It is a lose-lose situation. Story 15. I took a girl on a date to an apple orchard one time. It was our second or third date, and it ended up being kind of a disaster. It was a little later in the season, so most of the good apples were gone. But it was a nice day. I set it up mostly so we could just spend some time together without phones or any technology. She spent the whole time complaining and moping about how we missed peak apple season. Story 16. If one person keeps saying something like, "I don't deserve you," they will probably self-sabotage at some point and show you that. Story 17. You are quick to feel suspicious of each other. There has to be some willingness to trust if things are going to grow well. If they do not like you spending time on your hobbies or with your other friends, that is very bad. Story 18. When one person is doing all the legwork, making the drive, choosing where to eat, choosing where to have fun, and spending the money while the other person is not meeting them halfway. Story 19. For me, it is if the man spends a lot of time speaking negatively about his former partners. I used to feel special when a man told me that I was different from his other former partners in a positive way, but I have learned since that such men just do not know how to appreciate a good woman when they have one. They always want better no matter how good they have it. Story 20. If you cannot be honest with them, then it is hard to build a real foundation, much less have a long-lasting relationship with them. Story 21. Disagreement about what constitutes a crisis. Whether one partner is upset over something minor and unimportant, or the other partner acts like everything is fine when the world is burning down, the objective truth does not matter. It is the perception that matters, what the partners think about each other's reactions. An inability to meet in the middle is a clear indication of mismatched values. Story 22. The first time there is strain or any kind of tension, His or her reaction will indicate what your future will be like. Pretty simple. Story 23. When you try to bring up something they have done that might have upset you, and they respond with all the times you have upset them but never told you about. Story 24. The very first time you feel disrespected, it is time to leave and not waste any more time. Respect is one of the foundations of a good relationship. You should not have to earn respect. To enter into a relationship after a normal dating period, it should be present or it never will be. Story 25. You are envisioning a future with someone who has traits your current partner does not display. You may hope to see these traits, think they are below the surface, but they never materialize as you become more entrenched, investing time and energy into a relationship that is not meeting your needs in real time while continuing to believe it will one day. Story 26. When you come home early and she is upset by a local construction worker who is supposed to be replacing the garden wall. Story 27. It really depends. If you pursue someone just to satisfy your ego and win them over, and not because of a real connection, the relationship usually doesn't last more than 3 months. I have seen people chase others just for validation, and once they get what they want, the effort disappears. That is not love. That is ego. But those who start with genuine understanding, honesty, and no pretenses can build a connection that actually lasts. Also, thanks. Posts like this make me realize I am still single. Story 28. Lack of communication. Assuming you have already slept together, you should feel comfortable talking about many things openly and honestly. However, if there is a sense of deception or mind games, it is not a healthy relationship. Story 29. Seeing them treating their roommate like trash. That is not just a personality conflict. That is the ghost of Christmas future for you. Story 30. In my opinion, if you do not work together well, you cannot make the relationship work long term. Test this by tackling some projects together. Story 31. Sudden emotional distance. In my opinion, things will suddenly feel like they took a left turn. If that feeling lingers, then you are on borrowed time, or there is a major traumatic event in her life that she is not sure how to talk about. Usually, it is the former for me. Story 32. How you handle conflicts tells a lot. If you see it as really hard to discuss small things and find deal breakers early on, personally I find it a sign that it is not going to work long term. Emotional intelligence is also important. Something to look for is their ability to regulate negative emotions like anger. Story 33. For me, if you cannot sit in a room quietly with one another without feeling uncomfortable, someone either gets agitated or assumes they are not interested just because I want some peace and quiet. Story 34. Scientifically, if one person in a couple rolls their eyes whenever the other is speaking, the chances of an eventual divorce increase significantly. Often, it is a micro-reaction that is not even conscious. Story 35. After years of relationships and reflection, I have observed that relationships where partners live apart but are together every day are not healthy. Also, if they never choose a restaurant, order, and pay occasionally, it indicates an imbalance. Some people push you to your limits and withdraw as much as they can, both monetarily and spiritually. Story 36. Instead of saying, "Please pass the salt," she says, "You ruined my whole weekend again." Story 37. When you are on a first date and the person across from you makes you feel like you are their knight in shining armor, then you proceed to get love-bombed. Feels great at first until reality hits. Relationships take work to build and grow from both sides, not the fantasy version in someone's head that generates unrealistic expectations. Story 38. I am just not sexually attracted to them. This sounds foolish, but when I was younger, I was persuaded into 2 different relationships despite knowing from the beginning that the sexual chemistry was not there. I have lost a few friends over the years who could not handle rejection, but I will take that over working through a lack of sexual attraction. Story 39. You cannot talk about the things that matter to you for various reasons. You may feel you will not be understood. You are scared you will be judged. Or you simply do not feel comfortable enough to say what is on your heart. No, it will not work. Story 40. Always assuming that you are wrong or challenging your knowledge of your profession. My ex tried to pick a fight with me about my professional knowledge based on what some random person told her. This is knowledge I studied for 3 years in college and have worked with for 6 years. Story 41, Eggshells. If you do not feel like you can be yourself and talk about both good things and hard things, it will not work out. Story 42. When she cannot take accountability for her actions and you feel like you are walking on eggshells, unable to be yourself. Story 43. If their first love or any ex is good friends with their family or they have their ex on Snapchat, I recommend you get out. It is genuinely a trap. Do not hesitate. Story 44. When you have different ideas about how you want to live your life, marriage, children, travel, to name a few major concepts, but also ways of living and the kind of life you envision for yourself, if theirs is not at least similar to yours, it may be time to reconsider. When silences feel awkward and uncomfortable. If either party shows early signs of manipulative or controlling behavior, it is always small at first. If they make an argument about me versus you, not us versus the problem at hand. If they cannot correctly apologize and take ownership of a mistake, because it will happen, we are human after all. Story 45. They leave suddenly and come back only 2 weeks or a month later, either because you texted them after a while or they say they did not have time and apologize for responding late. The biggest nonsense you will have to deal with in your 20s is the belief that the other person in their 20s who is on the internet is too busy for you. Story 46. Lack of communication and disrespectful behavior. When someone does not tell you what is wrong or resorts to insulting you during disagreements, leave quickly because otherwise you will be in a world of hurt. Story 47. If someone won't stop talking about their ex and still has many of their belongings after a decade, it shows a difference between keeping something useful and being attached because they have not processed their feelings. No matter what you tell yourself, you will always be second to the person they have not yet let go of in their mind. Story 48. Someone refusing to change even a minor flaw when you were trying to get them to meet your family. I used to be with a girl whom I really was fond of and cared for, but she had the most vulgar way of speaking that it would rust the paint off a sailor's ship. She was like Aquafina but talked much ruder and dirtier. Think of a Chinese woman who talks like an old Andrew Dice Clay routine and never slows down. I wanted to bring her home and have her meet my parents, so I tried to gently and politely talk to her to make sure she wouldn't just get drunk and start shouting curses and Chinese swear words after an hour or two. She literally refused to acknowledge that her public language. She even drunk-dialed me a couple of times over the years, saying, "I love you," unexpectedly in the middle of the night. She never stopped cursing, though, and that was something I would not force my family to endure, so we never really seriously got back together. Story 49. If she tells you she is a flight risk, just listen and move on. It is not a challenge, and you will lose. In other news, I am not okay. Story 50. Going to couples therapy when you are not engaged or married. My friend and his girlfriend went after only dating for a little over a year. As soon as I heard that, I knew it was over. They broke up this past month. Story 51. I think when there is friction and annoyances, the first months should be smooth as jelly. That being said, if the couple does not talk early on about the big goals such as family, children, and finances, the incompatibilities can show up later. Story 52. Their friends do not like you. Their friends likely share their values and view you more clearly than your partner does. It is only a matter of time before the spark wears off, and their friends turn out to be right. Also, if there is a problem between you, they will be bombarded with messages about how they should end the relationship with you. The same applies if your friends do not like them. Story 53. If their friends disrespect you in front of them and they do not say anything about it, or if they disrespect you or speak badly about you to their friends and your family but do not talk to you about what is bothering them. Story 54. Communicating too much. Yes, it can happen and occurs more often than you think. One person gets overwhelmed. The other thinks it is normal. Story 55. If whoever you are with tries to tell you how much of your hobby you can do, that is an instant no for me. Story 56. I would say when you find out 3 months in that she secretly has a sugar daddy, that is a pretty good sign. Story 57. If either person is unwilling to work on themselves, disregards boundaries, or says toxic things like, "What? You think you're better than me?" Even if sarcastic, this is a major red flag for an unhealed emotional wound. If the words don't match the actions, leave. If they don't ask clarifying questions and just build up resentment or dislike over a wrong assumption, refusing to see the error in that thinking and defending it, they are doomed to repeat it. If there is a lack of respect on either end, the relationship cannot survive. Dishonesty is another indicator of a lack of respect. A lack of communication, especially when either person refuses to acknowledge the issue and work on it, is problematic. If they are incompatible, for example, they lack desire or want more children. If they downplay your accomplishments, end the relationship. Story 58. You glance out the car window while someone is walking by, and your girlfriend repeatedly asks, "Do you know her?" Story 59. If they absolutely disregard your feelings and needs, putting the needs and preferences of themselves and others first, it shows they do not care about you and have no regard for your feelings. Story 60. Emotional support is essential. If your relationship is based solely on lust and charm, it will fall apart quickly once the lust fades. Emotional support is the foundation, and understanding this is like having a superpower when relating to women. Many men do not realize how important it is because they focus more on physical connection, while women value emotional connection the most. Trust me, guys, understand this, and your relationship success will improve. Story 61. Right off the bat, there are super long response times, one-word responses, or emoji reactions. They are also constantly on their phone doom scrolling, even when you are there with them on a date or just hanging out at home. Additionally, they tell you exactly how to act around their friends. Story 62. When your significant other or you care more about themselves than you, it is a problem. After my 36 years of marriage, one of the most significant elements of a successful relationship is mutual respect and an understanding that together, you are one. You care for each other as if your partner is yourself. It is hard work that exposes you both to ultimate trust and vulnerability, with rewards that follow the commitment and are uniquely spiritual. Story 63. Annoys you tremendously when they say something or you feel like they did not really understand what you meant or said. Story 64. If you are the only one who makes any move, even a small one like calling the other side, this is going nowhere. Either they are not ready for a relationship in the good scenario, or in the bad one, they only like the idea of being in a relationship. Or you are a plan B. Story 65. He was the opposite of what the comments say. A happy relationship, yet he still dumped me because he did not have intense feelings for me. So, you never know. Story 66. A few signs I have learned over the years. Willingness to grow and change versus the mentality of, I am who I am. Level of self-awareness. Difference in emotional maturity level. Avoidant attachment styles. Spiritual beliefs. Difference in financial planning and stewardship. Different life goals. Past tendencies to cheat. Story 67. When you cannot bring up an issue without them saying something like, I am always the bad guy, or I can never do anything right for you. My ex would constantly make it about himself whenever I wanted to talk to him and explain that something he said or did hurt me. He was always dismissive. Story 68. If they avoid doing basic things to make you comfortable and safe, such as getting a sexually transmitted disease test, wearing a condom, or wearing a seatbelt. Story 69. She kept score of everything. If I bought dinner, she would immediately send me half the amount through a payment app. If I spent 2 hours helping her move, she would time herself doing something for me later. Story 70. When someone tries to change you, for instance, to quit smoking, and it is not something serious, they move on. You are who you are and should be loved for who you are without anyone trying to change you. Coercive, controlling behavior. Story 71. Arguments occur over text messages. Bonus points if one person deliberately misrepresents all of the other person's points. Story 72. You argue over things that are clearly happening for other reasons. If you or they cannot just let things go, it is a sign that there are much larger issues. Story 73. When they make a list of your cons but leave out the pros, I guess this one is a little close to the bone post-breakup. Generally, criticizing you even in very small ways early on is a giant red flag. Story 74. When one person is working through overcoming a deal breaker at the start of a relationship. A good example is getting clean from an addiction, But generally, anytime a person gets their act together to be with somebody, it is a hard dynamic to overcome. Warranted or not, dating a person who is struggling creates a dynamic of worry and approval seeking that can be hard to break. Story 75. One early sign I have learned to watch for is when someone becomes defensive the moment you express hurt or confusion, instead of showing curiosity about what you are feeling. I was talking to a man who said he really liked me, but anytime I gently opened up about feeling disconnected or unsure, he responded by justifying his behavior instead of trying to understand mine. It became clear he was not actually interested in getting to know me, just in protecting his own comfort. If someone cannot hold space for your feelings early on, it only gets harder later. Story 76. Lack of communication and not discussing potential issues that could affect the future of the relationship. Story 77. When you start dreading their messages instead of getting excited. I found myself putting my phone on silent for hours just to avoid talking to my former partner. I should have known right then. Story 78. When the amount of obsession with each other is very intense from the beginning, it is usually a sign things will fizzle out quickly. Also, mismatched humor is important. Humor is much more significant than we might perceive. A person's type of humor reveals much about their beliefs, interests, philosophy, and intelligence. When humor styles are wildly mismatched, it may indicate a deeper mismatch in beliefs and philosophy. Story 79. The girl must have a stronger desire for the man than he has for her. I am sure I will be downvoted, but this is true at the beginning. Moving forward, he must be able to perform at a subjectively high level to maintain and deepen the respect she has for him. Story 80. I do not know if it is a bad opinion or not, but if you are from very different backgrounds, it will be hard. My ex-wife was religious, and I was raised very liberally. After the honeymoon phase of the relationship, we clashed on many different things. Life goals, hobbies with no casual drinking, and things you can say. Story 81. When someone tells you all their ex-partners were crazy, consider that if all your ex-partners were labeled crazy, you might have driven them to that state. Story 82. When your partner tends to call you dramatic after you share your feelings, no, you are actually just dismissing my emotions. Story 83. That it takes work. There will be moments of impasse, conflict, stress, internal and external to the relationship, even in amazing relationships. But the beginning should feel easy. Story 84. If your morals do not align, there is sexual incompatibility, poor communication where you feel you could never be fully honest or tell them everything no matter how bad, or a difference of opinion on children and marriage. Any of these issues means you are doomed before you begin. Poor communication can be improved, but if it cannot be fixed or involves a lack of honesty, then the relationship is doomed. The foundation for any good relationship is trust and honesty, which require complete and transparent communication. Story 85. It's quite simple. You meet someone, think you're in love, move in together in under 6 months, combine your assets, then go home after a 16-hour shift with a new DVD, some snacks, and a plan to buy takeout. If you open the front door and she is with someone else in an intimate situation, it is not going to work. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.